So welcome back to another episode of Pomelo Pitch Deck, where we kind of dive into proposals um, and the power of quadratic matching that's happening over in the Pomelo grants system. So for this one, we've got Thiago on the line. You might know him from around the space. You've been in it, with EOSIO for quite a long time, doing some amazing things. I've had the pleasure of having you on, other episodes that I host in the past, talking about the power of EOS and what's happening long before even Pomelo was envisioned. I think it was probably around even before Eden. Really, a lot's changed in the ecosystem since the beginning. The nice thing is you're able to actually get funding for projects now that you're building. And you're here today to talk about the Hyperion proposal that you're putting together. So first of all, just for people who don't know you, who are you? Who is EOSIO and what is Hyperion?
Great. Thanks for having me here, Jimmy. It's always a great talk. So EOSIO, we are a team of three founders, myself, Dominic, and Igor. And we started working on EOS before mainnet launch, while it was still just the open source software and the community testing it and trying to evolve the operational standards and plan for the launch. Those were good times. But since then, we've been working on EOS, especially on the technical side. We have applications that we use EOS here in Brazil and that are scaling. But our main contribution as block producer candidates is on the open software side of things. So we developed Hyperion, that is a history API solution. And just to kind of explain to people, history is quite complex in EOS. We can dive into that later. And we've been working on developing it, operating, and supporting other teams operating Hyperion for 3 years now. So that's who we are.
Yeah, I do like the real world. I'm a historian, actually. For people who don't know this, I studied, philosophy, ethics, history, business ethics, things like that. It's not necessarily the most, interesting thing if you're not interested in it. But like when you look at blockchain and especially EOS, the value that people who are providing full history nodes to the network is almost incalculable because it's not happening very often, right? There's maybe 2 or 3 block producers that are actually doing it, and like they're doing it behind the scenes and they're getting almost no recognition for it, right? Like I think like EOS Sweden, they do something with it. I think like EOS USA, I think Jenner EOS does a little bit with it, but like there's not a lot of full history node provision that's coming out of the EOS blockchain. And when you look at things like taxes, for example, and accounting, like these are like really important, not to mention like, how the whole operational system will work. So, hats off to that. I mean, so Hyperion is going to, maybe you can dive into the tech a little bit more, but what's the value add for the blockchain as a whole to have a history node on the blockchain, beyond the couple things that I already mentioned?
Yeah, a big shout out to the Sweden guys, to EOS Nation, to Grey Mass, Aaron. They are operating different solutions and providing history, and this is really important because when usually you will need a history API and what is the history API? It's basically you ingest, you index, and you store blockchain data. So if anyone needs something that was in the state of the blockchain in the past, like your account balance for some token, or any information that was in a transaction, as like the transaction traces itself or a comment that was in the transaction, you need the history API because otherwise this is just stored in the block log in the form of blocks, and those are not searchable. So this providing this service is really important for people just accessing like wallets and block explorers and dApps in general. There are a lot of dApps that rely on history information to work, and basically any thing interacting with the blockchain, any person or system interacting with the blockchain will need history at some point. And of course, you can operate history yourself, but as you may imagine, for the EOS IO networks, this is quite a heavy load because you have 0.5 second block time, and you can have, in some blockchains can have like 9,000 transactions a second. So it's a heavy load to ingest those index and store and serve queries if blocks keep on coming uh, to every second. So that's kind of the complexity of running this, and the importance. And as you said, this is sometimes like the cartoon. You have like someone maintaining a piece of software somewhere that people usually don't know about it, but that's it.
Yeah, I mean, it's the beauty of technology, mainstream technology. There's a reason why a lot of these giant tech companies, hire internally for people to build out their own stuff. But that's kind of the problem when you're going through blockchain and startups, is that like a lot of times we don't have the resources to be able to do this, right? Like when I'm looking back at Pomelo season 1, what I saw was like a lot of hardcore dev stuff. If you look at the power up proposal, for example, or the gray mass proposal to build the wallets. When we're looking at season 2, we're seeing an influx of social, which is good. But at the same time, there's a lot of things in terms of like general day-to-day infrastructure that still needs funding, that isn't necessarily being looked at. And I would put your proposal into that kind of third category. Might not be as flashy or as hyped as the social, or as technical as improving the viability of getting people in here with wallets, but like those things that you're not seeing, those are the things that make the experience in the tech world worth it, right? Like it's the development on the back end of Facebook or Twitter that really holds the real value, not the pictures of food that you're putting on there on a daily basis,
Yeah.
right? So like, yeah, we'll pull up your proposal, but why don't you explain? So what will the funding do? Do you have specifics on how
Yeah.
this will be allocated, other than just providing?
Yeah, and just something. I mean, we are talking to the foundation. We participate in the API Plus working group. I mean, they are looking at it, but we also think that this should be of greater visibility in terms of solutions. Also, I mean, you have the possibility of doing a centralized solution, a decentralized, or just working open source. But you're right; it's not as flashy, and thanks God that Eve is looking at it, and that the whole plumbing of EOS is important, although not as hype. But the proposal that we have on is for basically to pay for the collocation of a new cluster, a new Hyperion cluster for EOS mainnet, just for people to understand. I already told it's a heavy load, so Block One deprecated the original history API, and we developed Hyperion and maintained it since then. Um, but what we have is basically today, for one cluster for mainnet, we have basically 30 billion documents on Elasticsearch. We have 9 terabytes of storage, and we have 5 Elasticsearch nodes with 160 cores total. So this is a pretty specialized hardware, And what we are asking here is for the support in the collocation for this. The collocation in a data center for 1 year, we think it's reasonable. And the idea is that having a second cluster on mainnet, this will allow us to have a development cluster, because as developers of Hyperion, we are constantly testing things and debugging things. And if we do this on the production cluster that's serving mainnet and serving 2 million requests a day, uh, it's way slower, because we have to take care with what it's done to that cluster. And also it decreases the reliability of our mainnet cluster. So having two clusters is important because of that, and that's what we are asking for. We also put hire one additional engineer, but basically we can use any talent we can get our hands on, because we have documentation and we have support for the community, and obviously software development for Hyperion, in addition to the just hardware and services, because what we are doing is like plumbing, so it's hardware intensive, and it's ISP intensive also.
Yeah, and I think, like you mentioned, what's coming out of the EOS Network Foundation as well, right? So these blue paper initiatives are pretty interesting, because now you've got kind of a dedicated route where various people that are doing various things can kind of, you know, collaborate and collect together, and you put these brilliant minds in the room together. So again, like, how will the funds be used? You're going to deploy a second EOS mainnet cluster, and you want to hire an additional engineer. So I think this is really important as well, because you know, we were dead in the water for so long with zero funding, and the ability to you know, bring in coders and people who are actually working on the back end that can get a paid salary is quite big, right? And so they'll be focusing on bug fixing, and allow the team itself to focus on major improvements of the software. So like, a lot of bootstrapping in the system comes from the fact that, like, everybody's trying to do everything, because there's no one to do the things that, like, you know, need to be done, so that people can focus on, you know, building out the software and building out the tech, and so I guess allocating funds towards other people will free up the team for, you know, troubleshooting is very different than developing, right? So I guess that's
Yeah,
a big part of it.
and in a sense, just having this infrastructure, and this infrastructure being reliable, the History API infrastructure, this will allow developers to have just a reliable access to something that may be central to their app functioning. So just having and investing in this reliability, it helps attract developers to the ecosystem also. So that's what we believe. That's why we work on that. It's a heavy load, but yeah, now the foundation is doing this, because bootstrapping services like that is hard, because you have to invest in infrastructure in order to deal with demand, and most of the demand currently is kind of free. People are not paying. We are providing a public service, because this also makes sense if you want to grow the ecosystem. So and we never had like a foundation before that could look at those things that are not that sexy but are very important to the network. But I mean, now we have, and hopefully with also Pomelo. I think Pomelo is a great initiative that people can contribute, and the quadratic voting is great. It's hard for us because we are not consumer facing directly, but I think it's important just for people to know what's happening, and the projects that are happening in the ecosystem.
Yeah, so definitely, I don't know. It seems to me like is a little bit less people paying attention to season 2. Again, though, go and toss an EOS in there, because it's that quadratic funding mechanism that like helps out the whole ecosystem, right? And so, I mean, if you want the EOS number to go uppy, then you've got to be supporting projects that are keeping the blockchain, at the front lines of development. Not only sustainable, but like, pushing the boundaries. Because let's face it, I mean, 2 years of no funding for a lot of these projects, kind of, we're still ahead, I think. It was such a well-designed concept that we're still way ahead, but there are other blockchains that are starting to catch up, that are on our heels, right? And so we're coming out of the trenches, with no funding, with kind of a bad image in the blockchain space, that now needs to be rectified. And things like the Pomelo grants allow for people to help fund Thiago and Hyperion and EOSIO and keep us kind of relevant in today's space. So if you go over here to the proposal, I'll put that in the comments. But you can also follow the links over here to the GitHub, and you can see everything that's going on. And I guess it's worth pointing out, because this isn't always the case, but this whole thing is open source, and the intent is to keep and maintain it as an open source project. So that's part of the good as well. Like, anybody will be able to kind of pick up the information and utilize it on their own too. So this is not just something that you guys are building as a business. You're actually building it as a public service or a good, from a coding perspective, into the whole ecosystem as a whole, right?
Yeah. The idea is contribute to the network, and also have as many teams as possible operating Hyperion instances and support them. And that's the thing about having the documentation, have a good documentation, and have support in the group, and helping people setting up their instances. And at the same time, just keeping up with the volume of the blockchain that keeps growing at 2 blocks per second, and just keep pace with the development of the protocol. That is now being done by Dan on Monday.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and so I guess you can also see the I guess you can also see the documentation. If we go back and what's happening with the donations, and definitely check out the documentation page as well. You can read all about it, and read all about what's happening in the development process thus far, and what's to come. So, yeah, I think it's a really.
And check our Telegram if you have any doubt or comment. Just go there.
Really important aspect too, because I mean, the whole thing about blockchain is syncing the information, right? And so if that's out of whack, could be problematic. So like you said, you shouted out a few other teams that have their own ideas, but we don't want a one-size solution fits all. We want options. I think that's the valuable part about blockchain and different things, people looking at solutions to different scenarios, is those options, right? If you box yourself into one kind of outlook or one kind of solution, it can become very problematic, as we have actually seen in EOS. So now is kind of the chance to be able to go out there and support. So other than the documentation pages, right, like if they need to reach out, or they want to ask tailored personal questions, or learn more from what's going on in your proposal and Hyperion, what's the best way to get in contact with you? Is it through the EOSIO Telegram channel? Is there other avenues or routes? Like, how can people learn more and become involved with the project itself even?
Yeah, Telegram channel would be the way to go. We have on our proposal the Hyperion Telegram channel, it's more technical, but you can find the admins there, and any admin will help you with any questions.
So again, follow the link in the description below to the proposal, or follow the link, you know, in the comments on this stream, and you'll be able to, you know, link to the EOSIO Telegram. Definitely go and like and subscribe to you know, EOSIO's Twitter. Keep up to date with all that's going on. I know, like, you guys have been really core in a lot of things since the early days. You've been grinding. You know, you've always been there, working hard. One of the, you know, really well respected South American kind of blockchain communities that has just, you know, been foundational even through the dark times in in EOS. So yeah, hats off to you, Thiago, and all of the things that you and your team are pulling together day in and day out, even if you go unnoticed for a while. Just my gratitudes to you, and all that you do for the EOS ecosystem and the EOS space.
Yeah, and thank you, because it's this diversity that we need. Someone working on the community side so that we can have this platform and talk to people, and we'll keep on grinding on the plumbing side of things, and appearing every now and then to tell the world what we are working on.
Well, yeah, you know, you're always welcome. You know, you or anyone of your team on a multitude of shows that I host, whether it's on this network or other ones. Yeah, please be in touch and definitely keep us informed. So, any last words to speak us out, or call to action that you want to throw in there?
Thank you very much.
Okay, great. We'll be back, I guess, tomorrow. I don't know, today, later. You know, I'm in Asia. You know, Australia's in Asia. Sometimes we get confused with the West and Europe. I don't even know who's awake or whether it's, you know, daylight. I mean, it's sunny somewhere, probably in Philadelphia, I guess. But you know, please do come and watch these back and share these out. It's important. It really helps. You know, what's even more useful, I think, than the funding itself is getting the word out there for projects like this. Because, you know, again, this is kind of, you know, not a flashy thing that you guys are putting together, and people might not know about it. And now that they do, I hope that they can look a little further deeper into it and see the relevant value, and toss you an EOS here or there, which will really help with, like you said, getting developers, getting this, you know, pushed out there, hiring more people to work on it, and paying people a living wage for, you know, making the world a better place, really.
Yeah.
So, thanks.
Yeah, go check the other projects. It's really important. Yeah.
And we'll see you guys all on the next episode.